somewhere in Dreamland.
It looked like the complexion of a dead person in a casket.
Random memories of waking up in the night, knowing I'm not alone in the room.
We have 3 cities that all claim to be the UFO capital of the entire world.
So when she turned on the kid's light, it stopped walking.
My parents told me these things didn't exist.
They're a little more ominous, creepy, scary, and the question is there, what is this thing?
Hovering just inches from the window was literally is what you'd imagine a grave to be.
Never seen anything like this in my life.
I'm still left with more questions than answers.
Welcome back, dreamers. If you've had an encounter, please contact me at somedreamland@gmail.com, find me on social media at somedreamland podcast, or check out the show's new website, dreamlandpodcast.weebly.com. If you're enjoying the show, please help it grow by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this episode with friends, family, and social media. Tonight, my guest is Lon Strickler. Lon is the host of a long-time-running paranormal podcast called Arcane Radio that deals with everything from high strangeness to paranormal experiences. Lon is also the purveyor of a fantastic information-filled website called Phantoms and Monsters, and if you haven't checked that out yet, it's a must. On top of this, Lon is the author of several amazing books, including Alien Disclosure, Mothman Dynasty, and Winged Cryptids. So without further ado, grab your blanket, turn down the lights, get comfy, and let's fade away into
Dreamland.
So Lon, welcome to Dreamland, and how in the hell are you tonight?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, man. I'm super excited to talk with you. Like I told you before, man, you're kind of one of my idols in this field, and it just wouldn't feel right if I didn't get to talk with you. You know what I mean?
Sounds good.
All right. So Lon, what got you started in this crazy field? Was there an experience? Tell us your story, man.
Well, I realized that there was something a bit different about me from the very beginning when I was very young. But it really came to fruition when one day when I was about 9, I used to go spend a lot of time on the Gettysburg battlefield as a kid. I was interested in history, and since the battlefield was right near my home, I used to spend a lot of time out there. So this one day I was riding my bike out to the area that was known as the Valley of Death, which is an area between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field. And there was a lot of action there on the second day of the battle. So as I was riding my bike, suddenly it's like a large TV screen opened up in front of me. And I started seeing soldiers, hearing gunfire, cannon fire, smelling gunpowder. All my senses were heightened. I was aware of everything that was going on around me. And, besides being shocked, I mean, I just didn't really realize what was going on. But it was like I was right in the middle of a typical 19th century battlefield. And I was sure this was the rendition of what happened at Gettysburg that day. And that went on for about 30 seconds and then suddenly stopped. And that's when I realized that something else was going on with me, and that I was able to sense and pick up and manifest some of the activity that happened at Gettysburg. And then I went to other locations, mostly places where there was strife or battle, you know, Antietam and other places. And I would experience very similar activity. So because of that, I learned by myself because, look, my parents had no idea what was going on with me. I didn't really offer much to them. I didn't know how they would react to it. They were kind of a faith-based family. We were evangelical Lutherans, and that's how I was raised. But, you know, this was something that I thought they wouldn't be able to understand. So I spent a lot of time in my high school years actually doing paranormal investigations on my own. And this was the early 70s. So you're talking about something that may be mainstream now, but was definitely not mainstream back then. And like I said, you would tell someone what you were doing, you kind of get that funny look and people think you were crazy. But as time went on, the word of mouth kind of spread, and I ended up working with folks who had hauntings and strange activity going on at their homes, businesses, or on their land. So, so that's how it really started.
Awesome, man. I bet that was an experience when you were a kid, like that opening up like that and seeing that the first time. I bet you thought you were a bit crazy there for a minute.
Well, I mean, crazy is the optimal word because I just thought it was crazy altogether. I didn't really know what was going on, but you know, as like I said, as time went on, and I started to realize I was sensing a lot of different things. And, you know, I kind of developed my intuition. You know, I'm not a psychic, you know, as a medium or such, but I can sense spirit energy. And that's what I did. And then I found a way of eventually how to clear certain locations. At first I wasn't very successful, but as time went on, and as I grew older, I was learning more and more. Then after I had moved down to Maryland, out of high school, I had a Bigfoot encounter in 1981, which kind of changed my whole perspective on the paranormal. So that is when I started getting into the cryptid and other beings besides the non-corporal beings.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Arcane Radio is listening to the Upright Canine updates that you give. Like, right. I get excited about that. It's, you know, I'm from Ohio myself, and I've been working on this little theory that I'm from Northeast Ohio, and been working on this little theory through the years that there's definitely something weird going on in the Great Lakes region. You know, Ohio, Pennsylvania, they're weird states. I mean, they're full of weirdness, and I'm not sure what it is yet, but there's something up there, Lon. You know, there's something different there.
Well, you know, I think a lot of the reason why, like Pennsylvania and Ohio and other parts of what we call the Rust Belt in the upper Midwest are so active with activity is because of the indigenous folks that used to live there hundreds of years ago. And, you know, the activity, for better or worse, was pretty profound. I mean, there was warring Indian tribes, and then they'd be fighting settlers, and it was just a lot of things going on over like a 300-year period. And I think a lot of it imprinted the land. And I think these cryptid beings, for better or for worse, are attracted to that. And I think it raises their energy and makes them able to be seen as opposed to being somewhere other than on our Earth plane. And basically what I'm saying is I think most of these cryptids are some type of extraterrestrial being that they're able to move in and out of dimensions through some type of portal or doorway. And I also believe they have the ability to cloak themselves to some degree. So when I say that, I'm talking about Bigfoot, upright canines, dogman, these winged beings and such. And, you know, as time goes on, we're learning a bit more as we go. quite frankly, I believe that the only way we're really going to get true answers to a lot of it is that we're going to have to kind of have to step out of the box a bit and go metaphysically and go beyond physical evidence to find out more of what's going on with this phenomena.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those points. I actually got to speak with Josh Cutchin not too long ago, and there's a guy who's really thinking outside of the box.
Yeah,
kind of different than everybody else, and it blew my mind. Like, he really is. I wish more people would latch on to what he's saying, because I think that type of thinking is just going to get us further on down the road, you know?
Well, you know, Josh is part of the new breed of investigators. He, Tim Renner, and a few other ones, and Tobias and others you have mentioned. I work with many of these people personally in cases. And I think that it's imperative that we kind of take the old school approach and expand upon it and look further on. I just like what's been going on in Chicago and more recently in O'Hara with these winged beings. This is something that I believe is truly an ultra-terrestrial series of incidents and sightings, and that we really do need to go further and try to find some way of communicating with these entities. And I think we've taken some steps in that direction. So hopefully at some point we're going to be able to come forth and give more and more evidence as to what we think these things are and what they're telling us.
Yeah, I mean, here's a question about that. Do you think that the Chicago Mothman, we'll call it, I guess, do you think that it's the same entity that was in Point Pleasant?
No.
Or do you think it's a totally different?
I think it's a different entity. I think it's here. It came here for different reasons. The Point Pleasant incident, I believe, was a summoning by a very strong indigenous spirit.
Chief Cornstalk?
Well, possibly Cornstalk. I have a lot of people that talk about that. It could very well be him, but the indigenous influence around the Point Pleasant area has been very heavy over the centuries. There have been several tribes that have come and gone in that area. The most prevalent were the Shawnee, and they had several wars and battles with themselves and with the settlers as well. So that area around the West Virginia Ordnance Works, or what people refer to as the TNT plant, it is very heavy in spirit energy. And I have been a part of investigations there where some of the most remarkable EVPs have come forth, and some of the energy that I've experienced and that I've detected is there. I do believe, now this is my theory, that the TNT area was like a youth hangout at one point back in the 60s. And I think the Mothman was basically a summoned guardian or sentinel of some type to keep that type of activity at bay. And I think it's still there. And in fact, I think there have been other beings similar to that have developed in that area as well. I still get reports in and out of the Point Pleasant and surrounding counties. So even into Ohio across the river. So the energy is there, but I think it all stems back to the summoning. Now, of course, there were a lot of things that happened afterwards, in particular the collapse of the Silver Bridge in December of 1967. I personally do not believe in the harbinger theory that people stated, where they thought they saw a Mothman above the bridge not long before the actual collapse. Well, that may or may not be. I don't know, but I don't believe that. I believe since this was a huge tragedy in a small town where 46 people died instantly, I think folks were kind of looking for an excuse or a reason why this actually happened. And, since John Keel had been there and had been documenting a lot of the strange activity in the local area, including UFOs, men in black and such, I think he kind of built on that as well. I mean, John was a journalist, so, he's going to work on that. And of course, the Mothman prophecies came out later, and everybody then got the chance to see the movie. Though the Mothman prophecies book itself really wasn't based much on the actual Mothman sighting. It was based on a lot of crazy stuff that was going on in and around the town. So, but I think he somewhat took advantage of that. I'm not faulting him for that, but he kind of put it on the map. So when these sightings started in Chicago or in the environs around Chicago, I was calling it the Chicago Phantom, but of course the press had to get something else out there to sell papers and to get people online. So they dubbed it the Mothman, Chicago Mothman. So, I had to kind of go along with it because I didn't want to be confusing people as to what was going on. So, that's how that got started. And of course, in more recent times, since October 2019, most of the activity has been centered in and around the airport. And more recently, we've had some pretty interesting sightings with several witnesses at one time. I believe that as many people know or don't know, there is a actual cemetery in O'Hare, West Haven Cemetery. It's right on the western part of the cargo area, a location where many of these sightings have taken place. And I believe at this point right now, there's probably six or seven sightings took place within 100 yards of that cemetery.
Oh, wow. So
there is a connection there. We are in the process of kind of going non-mainstream as far as getting some connections, some communication with some of those beings, some of those, what they call themselves, the unseen ones, are trying to communicate to us. And we've been pretty heavy into that the past month or so. It's just interesting that this sighting in July 22nd actually took place around the same time we started looking into this on a metaphysical level. And but as time goes on and this stuff becomes more apparent, we'll go ahead and release more and more information. But our team is really starting to pick up on this now, and hopefully we can get some answers, but I do believe that these are ultra-terrestrials at this point, because there has been some UFO activity and possible non-terrestrial activity around that area, and let alone the winged beings. So I think we're on the right track, but it's going to take some time.
So what are some of the methods that you guys are using to try to communicate with these things? Can you share that at all?
Well, I don't want to go deeply into it right now, but let's just say that there are several of us who are intuitives. Some of us are psychics, and we have been talking to others who have been channeling very similar activity around that area for years. Okay. There have been clues about similar activity in the same area and beyond for many, many years, actually. And we're trying to combine that together and work together to try to see what develops. At this point right now, I'm positive with it. I mean, I'm very positive with it. Myself and one of my colleagues have literally communicated with these beings. And we're trying to determine at this point why they're here, why they continue to be here, and what their objective is. And you know, like I said, this show right here is probably going to be the first one where I've actually come out with a lot of this, because we've only gotten some of this information in more recent days. So
awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, that's where we are right now.
Awesome. So what are the big differences between, let's see, the West Virginia Mothman and this new, the Chicago sightings that have been going on? What are some of the biggest differences between those?
Well, there is a description difference for one thing. The Mothman in Chicago at Point Pleasant was more of an insectoid-like being. It had the wings that did look like that of a moth. It had the inset head that was deep into the body cavity. It had the red eyes. Did have legs. Did have arms. But beyond that, there are subtle differences. The way it acted, it was much more aggressive than what we're seeing in the Chicago area. This thing in Point Pleasant literally chased down people on that road leading out of the West Virginia Ordnance Work plant area. And of course, it had no issues about showing up in front of other people around the town. And, some folks did believe it was aggressive. It was trying to get a message out of something. But, I do believe through the years I've been working on cryptids, and especially with the Mothman and, the winged humanoids, I think this was a conjured being, and it was there for a reason. It was there to protect the spirit that dominated the area. Now, as far as what's going on in Chicago, those beings, for the most part, have been very emaciated-looking humanoids, very thin body, anywhere from 5 to 6 foot, sometimes a little larger. Many of them had the red eyes, but a narrow, thin head. The wing structure early on was either insectoid or sometimes even described as that like an owl with feathers. But there have been other sightings like that on the periphery of Chicago. But for the most part, and I'd say 95% of the sightings are of a being with membrane-like wings like that of a gargoyle or a bat, and a total wingspan anywhere from 10 to 15 foot. Now, another thing about these beings are that they do have the ability to propel themselves without using the wing. That's something that is a big difference from what I understand of the Chicago. I mean, the Mothman at Point Pleasant. Though there were times when people saw this thing literally hovering above places. So I don't know if there's much difference with that or not. The descriptions were somewhat vague opposed to what we're getting now. But this thing that people are seeing in Chicago does have a tendency to have a very loud shriek of some type. People describe it as sounding like the brakes on a freight train when it comes to a stop. It's that shrill. And many of the people that have encountered this thing at close proximity have experienced feelings of dread, feelings of anxiety. Some have literally lost their faculties and have dropped to the ground, losing the use of their legs and getting very tired. That has happened on occasion as well. So, yeah, there are subtle differences, but, I still believe that the beings that are being seen now, I believe there's multitudes of them. At first I thought there were probably at least 3 of them. I believe it may very well be much more than that at this point.
Oh. Well, listen, I'm a Cleveland Indians and Cleveland Browns fan, Lon, and I totally believe in that Chief Cornstalk curse, man. I think it goes all the way up there.
Well, the Shawnee covered a lot of area. I mean, they literally covered most of Pennsylvania before they started moving west into West Virginia and into Ohio. So they were a very prolific bunch, and they had a lot of run-ins with a lot of other indigenous folks as well. So they're probably the most successful tribe in the Ohio Valley and also in the eastern part of the United States. Between them and the Lenape or the Delaware Indians, they were probably the most successful. There were the Susquehannock were also in Pennsylvania, other Iroquois type tribes and Algonquin type tribes, but more often though that the Shawnee were the dominant tribe. I mean, there were some very well known chiefs that came out of that group. You talk about Chief Cornstalk. The Tecumseh was a Shawnee chief as well, very prolific character. And so, yeah, there's a lot of history there, and I think a lot of this history is imprinted on the land.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So let's talk a little bit about upright canines, man, because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I lived pretty close to Silver Creek up there in Ohio, and that whole park and I've been there several times, man, exploring and trying to see what I could see. What's new in that department?
Well, most of our concentration and investigations have been in Pennsylvania and surrounding areas along the borders into Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, and into New Jersey. And it's a continuing phenomena. People with sightings will come forward occasionally. In Pennsylvania, we've been lucky enough to have several of the Pennsylvania Game Commission officers get into, actually watch out for us as well, especially in the central part of the state. There have been some few inconsistencies, things that they don't understand. We literally had an official with the Pennsylvania Game Commission who had an encounter along with his wife and another couple in Rothrock State Park, which is in Center County, Pennsylvania. So they had a good look at this thing. Semi-aggressive, but huge being. I mean, when the description overall of the ones that stand, the uprights, is that of, I don't know if you're familiar with the Underworld series, the Lycans in the Underworld series, or werewolves, or what do you want to call them. Many of those descriptions are very close to what people are saying and describing. Upwards of 10 foot in height, huge bodies, very muscular, very agile, but they do stand their ground. Now, they're not necessarily aggressive, but they don't back away. So, like a lot of the cryptid sightings people talk about, including these winged beings and Bigfoot, there may be some evidence of infrasound where they literally can convey to someone who is seeing them to back off somehow with some ESP or some type of abilities. I don't know of anybody who has literally taken a shot at one of these things, because we have a lot of hunters that that approach these or encounter these beings. So I don't know. I don't think that has been the case. They don't, like I said before, they're not that aggressive, but they can be a bit scary. The what I call the dogmen, which are the quadrupeds, they're somewhat different. The fact that they do travel on four legs, but their body style is interesting. They've got a head of a wolf, the body of a sloping back, like very much like a hyena, very muscular being. They do have, some of them have paws, some of them have, it's somewhat like, fingers or feet, and, like a human, but they're large as well. And, we've had a few sightings of those throughout the state. So, there are two types. I mean, there are two different types that people are coming across. So, I can't say it's a prolific bunch of sightings, but we've had, I'd say, about 26 sightings since Butch Witkowski and I started working on this project in 2013. So, besides the historical sightings that we already had record of, we had that additional 26 as well.
Wow. Well, hey, let's talk about Phantoms and Monsters for a minute. Your website. Absolutely incredible website, Lon. It's like a museum, man, for me. It's like an internet museum of weird, strange, crazy stuff. I absolutely love it, man.
Well,
I could spend all day there.
I mean, that whole thing is like a labor of love for me because, quite frankly, as much time I end up having to put into it, I'm either crazy or I gotta love what I'm doing. I've been doing the blog since 2005, and I literally had to be talked into doing that. I wasn't going to do anything like that. I was writing for a ghost site in Maryland for about a year or so, and the gentleman who ran that told me, "Man, you need to go out and start writing your own blog. You've got so many stories and such that you've collected over the years," which I did. I had not only with my encounters, but I had investigations that I had done. I had logged those. I kept records of all those. Plus, I used to do a lot of traveling, and as I would be going on the road into other states and such, I would, just talk to common folk and get their opinion or in their stories and experiences as well. So I had a lot there to start off with. The blog started kind of slow. For the first couple of years, it was just a story here, a story there. It wasn't a daily thing. But as I got into 2007, 2008, then I started doing a daily blog. I started offering it through people's emails as a newsletter. And, it's steadily picked up since then. I estimate that we probably got anywhere from 30 to 40,000 people daily that read it. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's been a labor of love, but I've been fortunate enough, and look, I have been very lucky. I've worked with a lot of good people. I've been lucky enough to know a lot of other good people, and when you get witnesses who will trust you to talk and present their encounters to the public. There's a lot of responsibility there, and I take that with stride, and I am proud of that.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. It is a great blog. It's more of a website to me than a blog, but it's amazing, man. I mean, it's there. First of all, there are some real gems in there, like some real gems that I want to. While I got you here, I need to talk to you about.
Okay.
So, the Todd Seas investigation.
Right.
I know that my audience doesn't know much about that. So, this is something that I've been following pretty close, and it's amazing, man.
Yeah, this was an incident that happened in August of 2002. Basically, I heard about it. Like when most other people heard about it, what happened was the story started off that this individual, Todd Jeffrey Seas, was on his property, and he was going to go up the ridge, the Montour Ridge, on his four-wheeler, and go up there and spot deer, which in a way was kind of bizarre because here you are in the middle of August and so hot and everything. I don't know why you'd be up there spotting deer that early. But then again, I don't know. Everybody has their own bag. So anyway, he left about 6 a.m. and he rode his ATV up there, and he was expected to be home by noon. Well, he never came home. And, being a small town, that's Northumberland, Pennsylvania, in Northumberland County, and he lived in an area, what was that township? I forget the name of the township. But anyway, it was a smaller township. But everybody knew each other, basically. So by the time his wife got the word out that he was missing, and he was pretty well known around the area, they had over 200 searchers out there looking over, I'd say an area of about 2 to 3 square miles. Now this location has a large tension wire that runs across the utility wire that runs right over the ridge. And it's very heavily strewn with rocks, and there are rattlesnakes that actually live in these rocks and in the area. So, so they, with the authorities and volunteers, and they started going through everything. There's a pond that's on the property. They literally went into the pond to see if his body was in there. They had cadaver dogs all over the area. So they were pretty well, getting into all areas, and there was no trace of it, nothing. So eventually, about 36 hours later, and of course it'd been very hot and maybe a tiny bit of rain, but not much at all. But about 36 hours, his niece or cousin or someone noticed what looked like a white T-shirt on the property, or something white they could see from the window inside the house. So they went out there and looked, and they discovered his body. Now, his body was no more than 70 yards away from the house.
Wow.
It was in a small ditch that had a tree over top of it. He was dressed only in a T-shirt, a white underwear shirt, and just boxer shorts. None of his other clothes were there. And he had his left arm draped over the front of his body. He was laying on his back, but he was dead. So, they called the authorities, and they came, and they went and picked him up. The actual, coroner for the county was a local, undertaker. So from what details we were able to determine was he picked the body up, and he stored the body at his funeral home for the evening. Now, I don't know the procedure in Northumberland County then or even now, but the whole thing seemed a little weird to me. But anyway, the fact that he didn't do an autopsy on this body was really strange. The body was taken the next day to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is, I guess, approximately 80 miles east of Northumberland. And an actual professionally done autopsy was performed by an independent group. And all the findings were put down. But the thing was, the results of the autopsy were sealed. Yeah, nobody knew what was going on with the autopsy. So when the body was supposedly returned to the family, it was in what they described as a lead sealed box.
Whoa.
And they were told not to open it. They should just have it. They can bury it where they want to, but that's it. Okay, so so now suspicions are starting to arise. Unfortunately, with MUFON, Newfork, and the other agencies that reported this, it was a lackadaisical investigation. Too many people are taking too many people's words for what actually happened. Now, there was the day of this happening, the day that he disappeared, there were two fishermen on the west branch of the Susquehanna River who had an unobstructed view of the ridge, and they claim that they saw a huge disc-shaped craft hovering over the power line at the top of the ridge, and they saw something being raised or levitated into the ship, into the craft. They said they looked like a human. On the other side of the ridge was a local farmer who saw the same thing. So now here we have two witnesses that later on came forth with what they saw. The body condition was never really reported properly. There were rumors that there was a dead rattlesnake found beside the body, but wasn't. That he sustained a lot of decomp. He didn't. But after we got the autopsy report, well, let me say this first. When the body was found, there were many people still on the property, people who had been searching. They were all rounded up and taken to the Tuckahoe Fire Department, which was nearby. They were taken inside, and the doors were shut and locked. And 2 individuals walked in there in suits and told them that they are not to talk about this. This is confidential. This is, one person said that it was something about national security. I don't know if that's true or not. The speculation had been, and it's a rumored speculation, that this was the FBI. Well, it wouldn't be the FBI because it wasn't interstate, anything to do with the interstate. And, there was no foul play really even suspected at the time. But I believe this was United States Air Force. Now, back then, even before that, and since then, the United States Air Force has been involved with a lot of these UFO investigations and even some abduction investigations or supposed abduction investigations. And I think that's who was in charge. So anyway, and I got to give Butch a lot of credit. He was pretty dogged about this. He was able to track down the actual coroner or actual forensic pathologist who did the autopsy on C's. And he was able to purchase the full autopsy from them out of their private files.
Wow.
And the one thing that stands out is that the body had very little blood. And in fact, normally when they do an autopsy, they open the chest up and they literally ladle out whatever blood is settled. But there was nothing there. They had to go into the leg to get vein blood. So the body was placed at this location. It had to be placed there because nobody knew, it was there. Nobody's seen it. And it just suddenly shows up. And that there was no blood in the body. Now, the speculation was, and the cause of death, the official cause of death was cocaine intoxication.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just ridiculous because if he had the amount of cocaine in his system and degraded cocaine in his system, as stated on the final autopsy report, this guy wouldn't have walked 3 steps off the ridge and ended up in a hole down by the house. There's just no way he could have done it. You've been dead.
Right.
I believe the actual autopsy report was forged and changed by the government. I think they do believe that he was abducted and was killed by unknown being. And, Butch and I both state that we're more than 50% positive that this was an alien abduction that went wrong and that Todd Sees was a victim of it.
That is crazy, man. It's such a crazy story. And a lot of times when I'm reading some of these cases where there's alleged cover-ups by the government, I kind of laugh to myself because they make it so weird on themselves. It seems like they make it so hard on themselves that why would you believe some of the things that they say? It's weird, man.
Well, the government isn't known for being forthright. They do sometimes make some judgment calls on how they describe things, and it usually brings up more questions than answers. And in this case, that's exactly what happened.
Well, from people that question anyhow, that keep an open mind. Other people, they just go with what they're told, and it's sad that it's like that, but it is, unfortunately.
That's something that the paranormal world has been dealing with for a long time now. I have literally been questioned 3 times about cases I've been involved with by the powers that be in the federal government. And but over the many years that I've been doing this, I guess that really isn't too bad. But I have heard other stories as well from people who have gotten a little too closer than what the government was was satisfied with, and they were just literally told to back off. And I'm not one to argue with them. I don't need any trouble.
Yeah.
So if I'm getting into something a little deeper in what they believe I should be, well, that's fine with me. I'm going to back out, and what I get is what I get, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I mean, why put that on yourself?
Don't need that.
No. So I'm finishing up reading your newest book, Alien Disclosure, and I have to tell you that it is awesome, man. It is just, it's a great book. I love the compilation of stories that you put into this, and man, it's just well done. Like it kept that. Kept my attention the whole time, man. It's a great book, and you did a great job on it, man. I mean, it's awesome.
Well, these are all cases that I've been involved with. I have been lucky enough to be privy to a lot of these either abduction scenarios or encounters scenarios and such. So, over that time, I've formed some opinions about a few things. And, I just put it out there, what I believe is happening and what has happened and what will happen. As far as what's going on in Chicago now, I think I'm going to have to classify that as some type of disclosure in the same vein as extraterrestrials or aliens. So, I don't know when that's ever going to happen. I got a feeling we're going to be on this case much, much longer until we get some progression as to where we can get, some idea of what's been going on. But, it's something that keeps going all the time. The paranormal is just not going to stop. I mean, there's always going to be phenomena out there. People say, oh, well, the Bigfoot, they figure out what's going on with Bigfoot. It'll be a moot point. No. It won't be a moot point. There's a lot more that we don't know. And it will continue like that. Now, hopefully, for those folks who are getting involved or that are young and getting involved with this, they're going to be more open-minded than some of those old codgers that have been doing this for such a long time. I kind of think out of the box for a lot of the things I've been involved with, and believe me, I've heard a lot of criticism over the years because of it. But I just try to tell it like it is, the way I see it. So
Well, I mean, if it's your opinion in the way you think, then who can say anything anyway, right?
Well, you can let it bother you, but I don't let it bother me at all.
Right. So one of the coolest stories in that book is the David Eckhart ordeal. How'd you get involved in that?
Well, that's an interesting story. David had been going through this abduction scenarios for a long time, actually. And first of all, David and his family lived in an area close to Pensacola, Florida. They lived in this huge house that David built, and he's a contractor. And they were living a very comfortable life. And but David had some medical issues. Basically, he had some crippling arthritis issues. So one night when he and his wife were in bed sleeping, they were hearing all kinds of crazy noises. They didn't know where they were coming from. They thought, well, maybe the place is haunted. I don't know, So David, being as inquisitive as he is, he started setting up cameras and all kinds of different things in hope of capturing something. But as this was going on, he noticed that the cameras were starting to be destroyed, were starting to burn up and such, and he couldn't explain that. So one day he noticed as he was laying there that the far wall in the bedroom seemed to be opening up or opaque, and he started hearing noises coming from a distance. And this is the way he tells me, as he got up and walked over to the wall, he could look down into a cavern. Well, not long after that, David started experiencing visitations from a bunch of these gray-like beings, like, people would call them the Greys or whatever you want to call them. But he also was having an encounter with a particular reptilian being. And apparently this reptilian being was the one in charge, but he was kind of put in charge of David. And in fact, as time went on, he was instructed to explain to David what some of the things that were happening to him, explained everything to him. And they even gave him access to the location and the facilities where the people who have been abducted were taken to. So, and he still doesn't know why that happened. He still can't figure out why that happened. But what they did, when they first came into the bedroom and the first time, they started performing surgery on him. And when they were doing that, they did it over several nights. And then they would close him up, and the next night they would open him back up again. And they literally cured him of his arthritis.
Wow.
I have the x-rays and everything that document, what he looked like before and what happened after. So that happened. So then he started, and him and his wife and his 2 children started experiencing abduction. And they were literally taking him through this portal into certain areas, certain facilities, in particular the cavern-like facility where there were hundreds, if not thousands, of reptilian families, family groups, habitations, but there were also places there where it looked like what David said was slave labor, where they were using other alien beings and humans to mine and work in this cavern.
Wow.
Slaves, if you want to call it that. So, at another point in time, he was taken to an area where they were doing experimentation, where they were literally cutting open human bodies from the back and disposing of them after they were done. And he saw a lot of this. And, it's hard to talk about. And really, I go into a cursory description of much of this, but I do talk about what he was seeing, and he was able to see how they disposed of the bodies. They were literally thrown into like a multi-story furnace facility or something like that, and just dumped in there.
Wow.
So people can say all they want about people disappearing and such, but I think some of this, not most of it, is because that they're able to take these people and to do with them what they may. It always makes me a bit angry when people say, "I wish I'd love to be abducted and this and that." And I just don't. I just look at them. They're crazy. You don't want to be involved with that. I've also, So, and this is still going on with David. I mean, it has evolved over the years. And in fact, he's living in another home right now. Him and his wife are divorced. He lives by himself, but his kids are over there a lot. And the actual visitations by these beings has really changed into almost a daily thing now. He has photographed a lot of different entities in that home. He's photographed transports where they come in and out, and a lot of the beings themselves. There's a certain way he has to do it. They do not want him filming them directly. He's got to do it through either a large jug of water or something that filters the fact that he's doing this. I know it sounds bizarre, but it's it does seem to that be the case. And for those folks who read my accounts about David over the years and then read the book, I do go into a little more detail in the book as to what's been going on over these years, but it's still continuing to this day.
It's a crazy story, man. Like, crazy. And as far as the photographs that are in your book, that pretty amazing. But that technique that he uses, I've actually heard of this technique being used before. And the way that I've heard it being used is through like a crystal lens or through water as well, but to see other dimensions. So, I mean, I don't...
Well,
listen.
He does swear that he can open up, these dimensions can open up for him to be able to photograph. I don't know how true that is. I don't know. I haven't really seen the evidence of that, but I have seen the photographs, and some of those photographs are pretty freaky. I mean, they are just they're pretty interesting, and he's got more balls than I got. I mean, the guy. I mean, I don't know how long I got put up with all that, but he's sustained. I think it has affected him physically and emotionally over the years, and I'm somewhat worried about that. But you know, it's something he wants to do, and he wants to get answers, and he's pretty determined to find it out.
Lon, you've investigated and recorded literally thousands of cases. What is the one that sticks with you the most?
Oh, God. I think my personal encounter with a winged being back in '88 was probably the most profound. That happened here in Pennsylvania. You probably read it, but if you want me to tell you, I'll go ahead and tell you about it.
I want to hear it.
This was in the fall of 1988. I was living outside of Baltimore, and I just happened to be at the Timonium Fairgrounds at this one day, and they had something going on with local Boy Scout troops and such. And I actually ran into a friend of mine I went to high school with. He used to go on the battlefield with me when I was a kid. He saw a lot of weird things. And we were in Boy Scouts together. So I ran into him, and, you know, we sat down, had some lunch, and started talking about days going by. I hadn't seen him about 12 years. And, you know, we were talking about the paranormal stuff we had encountered in Gettysburg and a few things. So eventually it got down to something that he was involved with, where at the old Camp Conewago in Adams County, Pennsylvania, a place I'd been to when I was a kid a lot. I'm very familiar with it. But he was telling me that he and a friend of his were going to go out there the next weekend and investigate something that had been going on. And namely, some of the troops have been packing up early after camping out in the woods, and they'd hear screaming sounds, and it just scared the bejesus out of them, and they packed up and got out of there. So this happened several times to where they wanted to try to get an idea of what was going on. So he asked me, you know, just offhand, he said, would you like to go along with this? And I was game. I said, sure, I'll go along. So I met them up there that Friday evening, and we hiked into the woods, and we set up camp right beside Conewago Creek. And you know, we had 3 tents. We'd set everything up, get camp going, got a fire going. It was about 6 o'clock by the time we were all done. So we just sat around talking this and that and a lot of different things, and trying to, you know, we talked a bit about what we thought these screams and such might be. So that first night was nothing. Though that night when we were sleeping, we all three heard something moving about in the campsite. Though we used to always one of us going out and relieve themselves and such. We didn't really pay much mind to it. Though in the morning when we woke up and were sitting down eating breakfast, we mentioned it to each other, and you know, none of us had been up walking around. So. But there was no disturbance in the campsite, so we didn't think much of it. So that day, this was a Saturday, we were out. We kind of packed our backpack and stuff, and started hiking into the woods. And we were out pretty long. I guess we were about 7 or 8 hours. And you know, we didn't see anything. We didn't sense anything. I mean, everything was normal. A lot of wildlife. That area is just full of wildlife. A lot of deer and other small game, but. So we went back about 6 or 7 that night. We were sitting around the campfire eating and, you know, just talking. We were talking football most of the time, I think. And we were discussing, a few odds and ends about what this might have been. Then I guess about 11 o'clock, we heard this screaming sound. It was coming in from the woods, but, it wasn't that profound to where we thought it was something other than maybe just an animal screaming, Sure. Animals make a lot of crazy noises. Maybe it was a bobcat or something. So we didn't think much of it. So anyway, we just continued talking. Then about a half an hour or so later, we heard it again. Now this time, it was like that of a scream, a human scream, female child scream. It was pretty blood curdling. And it sounded like it was moving in and out, like this thing was either running around and changing the pitch of it or flying about and changing. So, so we were kind of alarmed by that. So we were continued sitting there looking around and wondering what the hell this thing was and, bantering about what it could have been. So I guess it was getting close. So we decided we were going to stay up the whole night. So, I guess it was getting close to 1 o'clock in the morning and I got up to stretch my legs. And I walked over to the creek. There's a trail that runs right along the creek. And I was just thinking, something just doesn't feel right about this. I mean, I don't know. Something's not right. So I walked back to those guys and said, look, let's grab our flashlights and go out on the trail a bit. So, okay, so let's do that. We were all stiff anyway from sitting around. So we just got up and started walking around and we went out on the trail. We went out on the trail maybe 50 foot when we all noticed to our right, something with red eyes standing in the creek. Now, the creek at this time of year was very shallow. There was a lot of moonlight. So, we actually went, grabbed our flashlights and tried to get, as we were putting our flashlights on this thing, it took off. And literally it jettisoned itself out of the creek up into the air. And then we heard it screaming as it flew away. So, we were all freaked out. We ran back to the campsite, not knowing what the hell we just witnessed. And, I estimated this thing was about maybe 6 foot, very dark. The other guy stated to me that he noticed something on the back of its back, like structures on the back. I saw it too. I didn't know what it was. I figured just wings. And he said the same thing. Well, we never saw the wings unfurl. And this thing shot like a jet up into the air. So as we were talking about it, my buddy, he wasn't saying a word. He was scared to death. So he blurted out, I am going up the administration building. You all want to come with me? That's fine, but I'm going up there and sleep tonight. So him and the other guy went up there, and I was alone in the campsite. But I wanted to see what the hell it was. I was hoping it would come back. But the rest of the night was uneventful. So, what is unusual about that is that sighting was very similar to what people are seeing in Chicago now. Yeah. After I'd started the blog and wrote about it in 2008, which was 20 years after the fact, I started getting, emails from people who had noticed something very similar in the same area for years. So, this phenomenon still continues to this day. The last time I got a report was like 4 or 5 years ago. They call it old red eyes now. I mean, I guess I'm part of a legend as far as that thing goes. But every once in a while, somebody will ask me about old red eyes, and there's something going on. People saw it up and down the creek. I mean, it's the whole length of the creek, and it actually extends west, goes east. I mean, it goes west and east towards the Susquehanna and empties into the Susquehanna. So it's a fairly long creek. But there had been, from what I estimate, maybe 5 additional sightings other than ours as well. Wow.
Lon, do you find that a lot of these cryptid cases and even some of the paranormal, the stranger paranormal cases, involve water somehow?
Sometimes, yeah. And that's been suggested with the Chicago thing. I mean, there's a lot of water around Chicago anyway. I mean, yeah, rivers and a lot of green areas with streams and rivers, and of course with Lake Michigan. And people have noticed that and said things about it. I really don't think there's any connection there. But as we're maybe we'll find answers as we're digging into this thing. there have been other phenomena that have been in and around water. There have been these what I call flying manta rays. Basically, people have been reporting over the years of these either from 2 foot wide to 6 or 7 foot wide manta ray shaped entities that are seen flying in the air. It looks just like a regular manta ray or stingray, and they've noticed it flying in the air. Now, it is always near some type of water, be it a lake, be it a stream, be it a river. I don't know if there is real connection with the water, but in some respect, I believe there is. But I believe that these may be some type of biocraft of some type. In other words, that they may be a living UFO or something like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is something I've been looking at for a dozen years now, and occasionally one will pop up and it'll come my way. But it's a pretty bizarre phenomenon.
So have you dealt with much? I know you're in Pennsylvania there, and you know a little bit about the Amish. Mm-hmm. Dealt with much powwow?
Yeah, I was raised in a powwow family.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not directly, but I had relatives who were powwowers. It's something I'm very familiar with. I have used some of the powwow techniques from the book, Your Lost Friend, A Long Lost Friend, which is a book by Holman, which is people call it a spell book. People call it a lot of other things. There's a lot of Christianity involved with it, but there's always a dark side to this type of thing. Now it has nothing to do with the Amish. This is the Pennsylvania Dutch. The Pennsylvania Dutch and the Amish are entirely different bunch. My family were Amish. My family were Anabaptists who moved from Switzerland back in the 1730s, and I'm ninth generation, so I kind of know about the Amish and the Mennonite sects and some of the things that are involved there. But as far as powwowing goes, this is a form of what they believe is a magic or a healing Appalachian folklore, very similar to Appalachian folklore that you find in the Appalachian Mountains and the Smokies and stuff, and it's very similar. But there have been some connotations of a cult and the dark side of this thing, the dark magic side. There have been deaths in the past, people being murdered as a result of it, people thinking they were cursed by a certain powwow witch, and the person ended up being dead. Very famous case back in the 1930s of a gentleman Nelson Raymeyer, who was actually a relative of mine, to be quite honest with you. He was killed by two gentlemen who thought he put a curse on them, and that was in York County, Pennsylvania. And since that time, powwowing is actually in illegal in the state of Pennsylvania, though it still occurs. I mean, you're not going to stop something like that. But I'm very aware of it. I know a lot of it. I know a lot of the things behind it, but I'm not a practicing powwower, and I just have never really got that deep into it.
Have you ever got to speak with Patrick Meekin?
Yes.
Yeah, I got to talk with him too. First thing I said was, "That's a powwow."
Yeah,
man.
I interviewed him on my show years ago when his book first came out about Holmes County. And it was funny because I was talking to him, and I told him, I said, Patrick, I know exactly what was going on. He started laughing. He said, okay, what was it? I said, you had a bunch of powwowers. And he almost fell out of his chair. He said, how did you know that? I said, I just knew it. I've seen it. These folks are, now that bunch were Amish. Now, there's Amish and then there are Amish, some are very peace-loving folks, peace-loving people, but then you get some of these that kind of get into the dark side of it. And that's what was happening in Holmes County. And why they did that, but they basically ran him off his land. I mean, they wanted the land, and they wanted some of what was going on there. But yeah, his case is a real case. I mean, it is absolutely true.
Well, I know that for a fact because whenever I interviewed him, when I was editing his show, it was about 2 a.m. here. I live in South Carolina now, so I can sit out. I got a nice garage. I sit out there in my garage. I do my editing, have the garage door open. I'm sitting out there. It's about 2 a.m. It's pouring down rain. I'm editing his episode, and right as he's starting to explain about driving this curse off of his land, right over top of me, a voice says, "Jesus Christ," like right over top of me. And when I record 2 separate audio streams, one for him, one for me. Nobody else in the room with me. So I cut this out. I isolated everything, and I did everything I could to try to figure out what the hell this was. I send it to him, and I didn't tell him anything. I said, I just want you to check this out and see what you think. Sure enough, he shoots me back right away. Yeah, he says, "Jesus Christ." He's like, who was in the room with you? I'm like, nobody was in the room with me. That's what made it really freaky, But then he had an interview like the week after that, and I guess these guys had all kinds of crazy stuff going on around them while they were doing this interview. So I think there's still something there. I think he's protected himself just enough.
Well,
but
he's a deliverance minister now, so of course he's protecting himself. I talked to him very early when the book came out, and I picked right up on it, and it was, his case is a pure case of some of the malevolency that can follow this type of conjuring and this supposedly faith healing, but there's a lot of bad things that can go along with it.
Yeah, it's a crazy case, man. It was a great book too. So, Lon, do you feel like all these different phenomena are all connected in one way or another?
Overall, I think it probably is. Most cases, personal cases I get involved with, something else raises its ugly head during the investigation. It never fails. So be it whatever it is, say it's a haunting case, and sometimes there'll be a cryptid activity at some point where somebody has seen something, or they start seeing UFOs, or they start sensing something else going on. It happens a lot, and it happens more and more as time is going on. I think the energy created by these phenomena, by certain cases, can kind of expand into other realms, and I think it kind of opens doorways to other locations as well. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah, I do as well. Well, Lon, where can everybody find your book, your website, get in contact with you if they have a question or if they have an experience they'd like to share? How can they do that?
Well, they go to phantomsandmonsters.com. That's the blog, Phantoms and Monsters. We got a large archive there. We got a lot of different things on there as well, where you connect to me directly through email, or call me directly on my phone if you have anything you want to talk to me about. We also have cryptidhunters.org, which is the Phantoms and Monsters 14 research team. We have a boots on the ground team of about 22 investigators nationwide, as well as 15 affiliate groups that are associated with us that look into individual cases. We try to cover everything that comes into us. If we can't, we'll find somebody to look for it. The books can all be found on Amazon. Just search my name, Lon Strickler, and they'll come up. We've done several republishing, new editions with new covers and a little bit more content in it. So there have been some updates on those. And, basically we just keep busy. I mean, I'm always getting new things. I'm always getting inquiries about phenomena, and every once in a while something will come my way, surprise me a bit. So yeah, that's the fun of doing this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, hey, Lon, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me and talk with my audience. It was awesome, man. I'd love to do it again. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. Well, that about does it for Dreamland tonight, dreamers. Thanks again for listening, and good night.